was certainly an element of making my grandfather proud and honouring him by taking part in the award that has been so much of his life's work. And I definitely hope that I have made him proud.
She came into this world fighting, a full month early, barely weighing 4.5 pounds, rushed into emergency surgery while her father was thousands of miles away. In Mauritius, doctors weren't even sure she would make it through the night. It was that serious, that fragile, that close. Fast forward 22 years, and now Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor, the quiet royal nobody thought would matter, is suddenly at the center of something major. A private cottage, sitting on one of the most secret royal estates in Britain, a place even senior royals had their eyes on. This wasn't just a gift, it was a message, a move, something deeper. And behind it all are names like Prince William, Lord Ivar Mountbatten, and a quiet bond with Queen Elizabeth II that barely anyone outside palace walls fully understood. Until now. And this is the same girl who didn't even know her own grandmother was the Queen. To really understand why Lady Louise is suddenly so important in this story, you have to look at who she is, and maybe more importantly, who she never tried to be. Lady Louise Alice Elizabeth Mary Mountbatten Windsor was born on November 8, 2003 at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey after her mother, Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, was rushed in by ambulance. Her birth wasn't just dramatic, it was dangerous. A condition called placental abruption caused serious blood loss, putting both mother and baby at risk. Emergency cesarean, no time to think, just act. And all of this happened while Prince Edward was far away on official duty. Louise was immediately placed in a neonatal unit in London, while her mother remained hospitalized. Those first hours were filled with fear, uncertainty, and quiet concern behind palace doors. And that moment changed everything about how she was seen inside the royal family. Years later, in a 2016 BBC interview, Sophie revealed something that surprised many. Louise didn't even know her grandmother was Queen Elizabeth. She would come home confused because kids at school told her, "Your grandma is the Queen," and she didn't believe it. To her, that woman was simply Grandma. That wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Prince Edward and Sophie made a clear decision to keep their children out of the royal spotlight as much as possible. When they got married, Queen Elizabeth herself agreed their kids wouldn't use prince or princess titles, even though they technically could. So Louise grew up as Lady Louise Windsor, simple, low-key, without the pressure that usually comes with royal status. And that choice shaped her into someone completely different from the rest. While other royals were surrounded by headlines, Louise lived a more grounded life. She went to St. George's School at Windsor Castle, later moved to St. Mary's School Ascot, and studied English, history, politics, and drama like any regular student. No special treatment, no shortcuts. In 2022, before starting university, she even worked at a garden center, earning her own money like everyone else. A royal working a normal job, something people didn't expect to see. There was also a moment that caught attention. Louise was spotted sitting on the floor of a crowded train, laptop open, simply trying to get work done because there were no seats. No complaints, no scene, just adapting. That's when insiders started calling her the most down-to-earth royal. And that quiet, grounded nature pulled Queen Elizabeth closer to her in a way that surprised many observers. Officially, the royal family does not acknowledge favorites, but behind the scenes, perceptions often differ. Reports, including one from The Sun in 2019, suggested that Louise was considered especially close to the Queen. And when you look at their shared time, it becomes easier to understand why. The Queen loved Balmoral, and Louise, along with her brother James, was among the few who genuinely enjoyed those visits in the same way. He inherited Moores Park back in 1992 and later moved to Bridwell Park, a major estate he eventually sold in 2024. That experience gave him a deep understanding of what comes with owning historic property in aristocratic circles. It's not just about land or buildings. It's pressure, expectations, financial strain, and the constant question of who is truly the right person to carry the legacy forward. That's where his connection with Lady Louise becomes more than just symbolic. Lord Ivar Mountbatten has already faced the emotional and financial realities of maintaining and letting go of family estates. Because of that, he's in a strong position to guide his goddaughter as she steps into something very similar. This isn't just advice, it's real experience being passed down quietly. Now this is where things start to get serious. The property at the center of all this has been linked directly to Queen Elizabeth II, and reports suggest she made a very deliberate decision. Lady Louise would inherit a cottage on the Balmoral estate in Scotland. That detail alone carries weight. Balmoral isn't like other royal properties. It's not controlled by the Crown Estate, and it's not owned by the nation. Alongside Sandringham, it's one of the few estates that belonged privately to the monarch. That means the Queen had full control over what happened to it. She didn't need approval, and she didn't have to follow the usual royal system. She could choose exactly who received what. And that makes this decision stand out even more. Places like Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and Kensington Palace are tied to the state. They aren't personal gifts to give away. But Balmoral was different. It was personal, private, and deeply emotional for the Queen. This wasn't just land to her, it was her escape. For decades, Balmoral was where she went to disconnect from royal duties. Long walks in the Highlands, quiet picnics near rivers, church visits in the local village. It was where she felt most like herself, away from cameras and expectations. And it's also where her life came to an end. On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral, surrounded by family. That fact alone gives the estate even more emotional significance. So when reports suggest that she chose to leave a cottage there to Lady Louise instead of more senior royals, it raises questions. Not loud ones, but real ones. Why her? Why not someone higher in the line? The answer seems to come back to personality. Louise was never loud, never attention-seeking, never trying to stand out. She moved quietly, stayed grounded, and built genuine relationships. That kind of presence doesn't go unnoticed, especially by someone like the Queen, who spent decades around people with different motives. While exact details remain sealed, because royal wills are locked away for decades, there's still a clear picture forming. The Balmoral estate itself is massive, filled with smaller properties beyond the main castle. There's Craiggowan Lodge, often used as a private retreat. There's Birkhall, now associated with King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Then there are smaller guest houses, hunting lodges, and cottages spread across the landscape. Some reports refer to the specific property linked to Louise as Rennie's Nest, or a similar name. Whether that exact detail is confirmed or not, the idea stays the same. This isn't just any building. It's a personal space inside one of the most private royal environments in the country. And there's already a pattern for this kind of move. Prince William himself received Tamnagar, another cottage on the Balmoral estate, from the Queen Mother before her death in 2002. That shows a clear tradition of passing these personal properties directly to grandchildren, skipping a generation. So, Louise receiving something similar doesn't come out of nowhere. It follows a quiet pattern that's been there for years. What makes it even more interesting is that William is said to support this decision. There's no tension being reported, no pushback. Instead, it seems like recognition. He understands the meaning behind it and respects the Queen's choice. Then there's the idea that this property might not just be an inheritance, but something more symbolic. In royal tradition, properties are often tied to major life moments, especially marriages. When William married Catherine in 2011, they were given Anmer Hall. Princess Anne received Gatcombe Park under similar circumstances. These weren't random gifts, they were foundations for future family life. So when people describe Louise's cottage as a wedding-style gift, it suggests long-term thinking. Not just where she is now, but where she might be heading. Even though she's kept her personal life private, with only light reports linking her to fellow student Felix da Silva Clamp, the message behind the gift feels clear. It's about stability, future, and continuity. And behind the scenes, Lord Ivar's role continues to matter. He's not just a name connected to her childhood. He's someone actively involved, offering guidance on what it means to manage property like this. Because owning a historic estate isn't simple. It comes with upkeep, decisions, and responsibility that go far beyond ownership. For Louise, this isn't just about receiving keys. It's about stepping into a role. And when you look at the bigger picture, the family dynamics around this situation remain complicated. Royal wills are sealed for around 90 years, meaning the full truth behind these decisions may never be publicly confirmed. What we see instead are patterns, quiet signals, and choices that speak without needing official statements. Information coming from royal insiders paints a very clear picture. Lady Louise wasn't treated like the others behind closed doors. There was a level of trust placed on her that stood out. Queen Elizabeth II reportedly believed Louise would protect something deeper than titles or status, something tied to family values and tradition. And this is where it gets interesting. The cottage didn't go to the Queen's own children, not to King Charles III, not to Princess Anne, not to Prince Andrew, and not even to Prince Edward. Instead, it went straight to the quietest grandchild. The same one who was seen sitting on train floors with her laptop, working like any other student. The same one who spent time working at a garden center instead of relying on privilege. The same one who sat with younger cousins, drawing pictures and keeping things calm while bigger conversations were happening elsewhere. While others were caught up in who stands where on the Buckingham Palace balcony, Louise stayed out of it completely. Now at 22, her future is starting to take shape in a way that feels very deliberate. She is currently in her final year studying English at the University of St. Andrews, the same place where Prince William met Catherine Middleton years earlier.
There was certainly an element of making my grandfather proud and honouring him by taking part in the award that has been so much of his life's work. And I definitely hope that I have made him proud.
That connection alone adds another quiet layer to her story. But Louise hasn't just focused on academics. She also joined the University Officers Training Corps, a program connected to the British Army. Photos published by outlets like the Scottish Daily Express showed her in full training gear, including a helmet marked Windsor. That detail didn't go unnoticed. This isn't casual involvement. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams pointed out that Louise appears to share the mindset and discipline of her grandparents. There's a sense of duty there, something steady and consistent. And with only a small number of working royals under the age of 70, conversations have already started about whether she could take on a more official role in the future. The inheritance of a Balmoral cottage quietly strengthens that possibility. It places her in a unique position. She now has a private space within one of the most important royal estates, alongside the carriage-driving legacy she inherited from Prince Philip. Add to that the guidance of her godfather, Lord Ivar Mountbatten, and the reported support from Prince William, and it starts to look like a carefully supported path rather than coincidence. What stands out most, though, is how people close to her describe her. Her carriage-driving trainer has said she avoids using her royal status and focuses on improving through effort. Lord Ivar keeps in touch with her regularly, not in a formal way, but in a personal, consistent way. And her mother, Sophie, has always emphasized that Louise should have the freedom to decide her own future. That balance matters, because this isn't just about property or inheritance. The cottage, sometimes referred to as Rennie's Nest, represents something much more personal. It reflects trust. It reflects a decision made by a grandmother who had spent decades understanding people, watching how they move, how they act when no one is paying attention. Queen Elizabeth II didn't leave that space to someone chasing attention or recognition. She left it to someone who would value its quiet, its privacy, and its meaning. Lady Louise didn't just inherit a place. She stepped into a responsibility. And based on everything seen so far, she seems likely to carry it in exactly the way it was intended. And that responsibility could shape far more than just her personal life. Because when you look at the current state of the monarchy, there's a clear gap forming. A smaller group of working royals, more public scrutiny, and growing pressure to stay relevant without losing tradition. That balance isn't easy, and not everyone in the family handles it the same way. This is where Lady Louise's quiet presence starts to stand out even more. She doesn't come with controversy, she doesn't attract constant headlines, and she doesn't appear to be chasing visibility. In a system where attention often creates problems, her low-profile approach might actually be an advantage. There's also timing to consider. As Prince William continues preparing for his future role, the idea of a more streamlined monarchy has been mentioned more than once. Fewer working members, more focused responsibilities, and individuals who can be trusted to represent the institution without distraction. Louise fits that model almost perfectly. She understands the system but hasn't been shaped by its pressures in the same way as others. She's had space to develop independently, to experience normal routines, and to build discipline without constant public judgment. That kind of background is rare in royal circles. And then there's Balmoral. Having a private residence there isn't just symbolic. It creates a deeper connection to one of the most important places in royal life. It places her closer to the traditions that shaped Queen Elizabeth II over decades. Time spent there isn't about appearances, it's about understanding how the monarchy operates away from cameras. That kind of environment teaches things no formal role ever could. It also raises another quiet possibility. If Louise does choose to step into a more visible royal role in the future, she wouldn't be starting from zero. She would already have trust, support, and a clear understanding of what's expected. Not because she was pushed into it, but because she grew into it naturally. At the same time, nothing about her path feels forced. Her mother, Sophie, has consistently emphasized choice. That message has stayed consistent over the years. Louise is not being positioned publicly, not being rushed, and not being shaped into something she hasn't chosen. That freedom might be the most important factor in how her future unfolds. And that's what makes this situation different. Most royal stories focus on titles, roles, and hierarchy. This one is built around trust, timing, and character. The inheritance, the Balmoral connection, the guidance from Lord Ivar Mountbatten, and the quiet support from Prince William all point in the same direction. Not a sudden rise, but a steady setup. Something controlled, intentional, and built to last. And when you step back and look at everything together, a different kind of royal story starts to take shape. Not one built on headlines, drama, or constant public attention, but something quieter, more calculated, and maybe even more powerful in the long run. Lady Louise doesn't fit the usual mold. She isn't leading major events, she isn't dominating media coverage, and she isn't trying to position herself at the center of royal life. But at the same time, she's not disconnected either. She's present, observing, learning, and slowly building something that feels steady rather than rushed. That difference matters more than it might seem. Because the monarchy right now is going through a shift. Expectations are changing, public opinion moves faster than ever, and every decision gets analyzed in real time. In that kind of environment, not everyone can adapt. Some struggle with the pressure, while others lean too far into visibility and lose control of their image. Lady Louise sits somewhere else entirely. She represents a version of the royal family that feels less performative and more grounded. Someone who understands the privilege but doesn't rely on it. Someone who can step forward if needed, but doesn't need to constantly prove anything. And that's exactly why her inheritance carries so much weight. The cottage at Balmoral is not just a personal gift, it's a quiet signal. A sign of trust from Queen Elizabeth II, someone who spent a lifetime understanding people, reading character, and making long-term decisions for the stability of the monarchy. That kind of decision wasn't random. It suggests that Louise was seen as someone dependable, someone who wouldn't turn a private space into something public, and someone who would respect what Balmoral represents. Not just as land, but as history, memory, and identity for the royal family. And when you connect that to everything else, the picture becomes clearer. Her bond with Prince Philip through carriage driving, her grounded upbringing shaped by Prince Edward and Sophie, her continued education, and her willingness to stay out of unnecessary attention all point in the same direction. Consistency. Even her connection with Lord Ivar Mountbatten adds another layer. Not just as a godfather, but as someone who understands legacy, responsibility, and the realities behind maintaining family estates. That kind of guidance doesn't make headlines, but it plays a role behind the scenes. And then there's the quiet support from Prince William. That might be one of the most important pieces. Because William's vision for the future of the monarchy has been described as more focused, more streamlined, and built around individuals who can carry responsibility without distraction. If that direction continues, then people like Louise become increasingly valuable. Not because they demand attention, but because they don't. That's a rare quality in a world where visibility often equals influence. At the same time, nothing about her future is locked in. She still has the freedom to choose her own path. Whether she continues with a more private life, builds a career outside of royal duties, or gradually takes on a more official role, the decision appears to remain hers. That level of flexibility is something many previous generations didn't have in the same way, and that makes her position even more interesting. She stands at a point where tradition and modern expectations meet, where the past still matters, but the future is being redefined. And instead of forcing her into a role, the system around her seems to be giving her space to grow into one, if she chooses to. The inheritance of the Balmoral cottage fits perfectly into that idea. It doesn't demand anything publicly, it doesn't place her under pressure, but it quietly anchors her within the royal structure. It gives her a place, both physically and symbolically, without forcing her into the spotlight. That balance is difficult to achieve, and yet it seems to be exactly what has been created for her. In the end, Lady Louise's story isn't about sudden power or dramatic change. It's about patience. It's about trust built over time. And it's about a role that may not be fully visible yet, but is clearly being shaped behind the scenes.